What is going on to all my movie fans out there, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are discussing a movie that was on my most anticipated films of 2023 because I'm a fan of the man behind the camera as well as the persons in front of the camera, and that is A24's Beau Is Afraid, directed by Ari Aster, starring the one and only Joaquin Phoenix. And yeah, the film is definitely starting and sparking a lot of conversation, a lot of mixed bags out there, and very excited to give you all my thoughts, but also have two special guests that will be joining me here in a second that will be sharing their thoughts on the film. So before we get into our Beau Is Afraid conversation, thank you all for clicking on today's video. Just a reminder, if you're enjoying the conversation, make sure you hit the like button, share this video, and then more importantly, we want to know your thoughts on this film. Pros, cons, what worked, what didn't work, metaphors, deeper meanings. What did you take away from the film? Let's have all those discussions in the comments below. And with that being said, I am here with two guests that have been on the channel before, but it's been a while since I've actually had the time to kind of talk to them about a movie or a show. And this is a good film to talk about. So I'm going to bring in my first guest here. We covered so many Marvel content. We covered DC and just a variety of different things. And I don't know if we've ever covered horror before. So this will be a fun one here, talking about the one and only Amanda from Candid Cinema. How are we doing, Amanda?
I'm doing great. I missed you. I missed being on this show.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah, and we've covered a lot, so I'm really happy to dive into Ari
Into this, right?
Aster.
This is a fun one,
horror.
Amanda, because a lot of, like I said, we've covered Marvel, we covered DC, but like you said, I don't think we covered a horror film or anything to this, because this is horror comedy of a
This
sort.
is everything.
So, fun one, Amanda. But before we get in and bring in our second guest, why don't you introduce yourself to people out there that are maybe meeting you for the first time?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I am a film critic and entertainment journalist. You guys can always find me at AMXND Reviews right down below here. I do film, television. I have some pretty hot takes on Twitter. So, that's what I'm known for. It's what I've been known for. So come check me out there. And my website, candidxcinema.com, and my YouTube, Candid Cinema, where I write, I make videos, I put them together, and sometimes I ramble and rant about the movies that come out. So, yeah. That's me.
Definitely. And she is not only a great content creator, but as far as your Twitter comment, yes, she is a great follow, and she definitely has some great takes. And I'm really excited to see the takes that we have on today's film. So guys, Amanda's information can be found in the description of this video. Our second guest, it's been a minute. I think the last time me and the second guest have been we're on the stream together, at least on my channel, was Batman, which was over a year ago. We've talked since then, but as far as having a conversation on the channel, it's been that long, and I'm so excited to have him back. The energy, the takes, the opinions, everything this guy has to offer is always a good time, and I'm excited to talk to him about this movie here. I'm talking about the one and only Kobe Mack. What's going on, my man?
Yeah. Yo, what up? It's your boy Kobe Mack, and I'm finally back.
Yes.
It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without a dope Kobe to step to, but I'm here.
There it is. Kobe, man. It's been a while. What a perfect film to come back and reunite and link up with Ari Aster's Beau Is Afraid, man. So, and listen, for those that are watching at home, I'm on Twitter, and I've seen my two guests, some of their opinions on the film, and I'm so excited to really dive deep into their thoughts on it. But Kobe, man, why don't you introduce yourself to the people at home?
Yo, what up, everybody? I am Kobe Mack, the self-proclaimed most subjectively objective film critic in the game. But yeah, no, I'm doing my thing. Loving life in sunny Palm Springs half the time, and half the time I'm in Los Angeles in full adjustment. But yes, I try to do my thing on here, be as authentically me as I possibly can be. So when they ask you where you heard it from, you can tell them Kobe told me.
Yes, sir. And man, guys, I'm so excited to have you guys back on and to talk about this film that, like I said, has sparked a lot of different discussions, more on the negative, but we'll get into that and see where we land on this film. But for those that are watching, I figure we start the conversation just kind of spoiler free, just for those that are kind of on the fence about the film, maybe even never heard of the film. So myself, Amanda, and Kobe will give you all our spoiler free thoughts, pros, cons, and ultimately, if we would, as critics, if we would recommend you all to give this film a watch. So I want to start with you, Amanda, and I think I want to start a little light. And I want to start with the question, what has your relationship been with Ari Aster's films prior to this, when, of course, we're talking about Hereditary and Midsommar? Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? What's your thoughts on Ari Aster?
So it's kind of like, it's not, I don't want to say love-hate relationship, but I really enjoyed the first half of Hereditary. It's kind of like he had me in the first half. And then it just kind of spirals a bit from the family dysfunction that I really enjoyed with Hereditary into something completely different in that third act. And that's where it kind of fell apart for me. It didn't end on a note where I didn't enjoy what he did with it because it just was so disjointed. But Midsommar, I absolutely adored.
Yeah.
Florence Pugh for life. That is the first movie where I was like, this woman is going to go so far. And I loved that he brought these horror elements in a cult like atmosphere in broad daylight. I thought that was very unique. So Midsommar is always up there for me. I watched the trailer for Beau Is Afraid and I didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know how to feel. I was indifferent going into this. So it depends on if he can stick the landing in the end. That's what it is for me now. Whereas like Hereditary didn't do that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this one. But Midsommar is always going to be up there for me. But the thing is that he is a very interesting filmmaker, regardless of how you feel about any of his work. He brings something new and refreshing to the table, and I can respect that.
I couldn't say it better myself. That's something that, and Kobe tossing it to you, man, it's something that I think a lot of us are looking for as far as film critics, and just looking for new media is something new, something bold. It might not be our cup of tea, but we can always appreciate someone bringing something new to the table. So the question I have for you is the same I have for Amanda, Kobe, is what has your relationship been with Ari Aster, with his 2 films, Hereditary, and even prior to that? I know some of us may have seen some of his short films that are very interesting to say the least. So Kobe, man, what say you about Ari Aster?
So I've heard more about this short film, and I still haven't like one. Where do we find this thing? Because
there's the one I've seen 2. I've seen one. It's
what's the one with the black family?
Yes, that's the one. Something about the Johnsons.
Johnsons,
yeah.
Like okay.
Listen, I warn you all at home.
Everybody keeps saying
disturbing.
Damn.
It is very disturbing.
Exactly. And I'm like, I wish it was just readily available, just like click on or whatever.
I think it's still on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken.
Possible. Okay. Yeah. Like, Amanda, like you took the words out of my mouth, where I felt like I missed the wave early on Hereditary, and I got to that film later, and I think that there was like that kind of like energy of it being overrated that kind of created this bias to me, and I was so rocking with the film in the first half, and then it deviates into something else, and I feel like, I don't feel like that was earned, but like I'm not mad at it. It's just like, but then completely rebounds, and I go into Midsommar, which was my number 3 rated film of that year. It was beautiful. I called it anthropological horror because like it was amazing. And I thought it was this incredible balance of like, it was not billed as a comedy, but he's able to insert kind of dark humor into this like truly horrifying, not scary, but just horrifying experience that you're putting people into and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I think that got me excited for Beau Is Afraid. Of course, I'm a big Joaquin Phoenix fan. Shout out to Joker, right? And I'm like, we really can't go wrong. As a theater kid, love Patti LuPone. All right, cool. I completely thought this little boy was a CGI composite character, Joaquin Phoenix.
AI.
I'm like, wait, hold on. He's real?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us did not know that he was real until like after we watched the
press
movie.
junkets. Yeah.
Poor guy.
It is insane. I mean, it's so going into it, I really didn't have too much sense of like, excitement, just other than I respect the people in it, in front of the camera, behind the camera, like you mentioned earlier. And what I ended up leaving with was something entirely different than that.
So to answer my own question, I'm in the same boat with you all. I was looking forward to this film, and I'm actually a bigger fan of Hereditary than I am Midsommar, because I was born in Bane. I was born in darkness. I was born on horror, and I always love horror. But as I've gotten older, there's the supernatural possession cult like horror has really kind of got under my skin recently, more so than and I love slashers, my favorite genre within horror. But seeing that type of possession is really kind of gets under me, and it creeps me the hell out. Toni Collette was amazing in that film, and her on the corners of the wall. The film freaks me out. Love Midsommar, but Hereditary is my jam. So going into this, I was very much so looking forward to seeing Ari Aster. the first things I heard about the film, even prior to the trailer and posters, was he was going for a comedy. And I'm like, what? Wait, Ari Aster from Midsommar and Hereditary comedy? How does that going to mix? And like Kobe said, there's been like this kind of surreal comedy within Hereditary and Midsommar, not intentional comedy, but comedy is just like, this is so crazy and wild. I just feel like the urge to laugh at some of this stuff. But this one was intended to be more of a comedy than the other two. So again, I was excited, but then at the same time nervous. And as we'll just kind of pivot into now and going back to starting with you, Amanda, on the spoiler-free portion of it all, positives. What was a positives or multiple positives that you took away from this film? Again, without getting into spoilers, what were some things that you walked out saying that was done really well?
I think all of the technical aspects really worked more so than the script. I think the first act, when we're at the apartment complex, was fantastic. I was feeling anxious while watching that. I think the camera work, the cinematography was beautiful. The sound design is something that I'm going to speak on as well, because it was just so good. The editing on top of that, all of that within the first act, I was like, if this is going to be consistent throughout, then I'm going to like it. Because again, he had me in the first half. So he had me there. And that's what I was so impressed with, because you're using these really like close-up shots, this quick editing, and then the sound to make the atmosphere like completely anxiety-ridden. So you connect with Beau about those feelings, even if maybe you haven't been anxious, like severely anxious to that degree. There is something that will spark that feeling within you while you're watching. And I thought the atmosphere was so great. He pulled you in. Joaquin is Joaquin. I mean, he can do anything, literally anything. And I liked his character at the beginning of this. So definitely, I think that he took some very big swings. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. I thought the animation portion, the production design in that very moment with the stage, I thought that was really, like, he utilized that quite well. But then there's some forms of obscurity later on that we'll talk about that didn't stick. But I do think that in short, the technical aspects worked for me more so than the script and some of the characterization.
Kobe, positives. Beau Is Afraid, man. What was some things that when you walked out said, regardless of if A, B, C didn't work, these elements worked for me? What was that for you in this film?
Yeah, so like for me, the crafts are high, right? Cinema is really, really strong. And also like, well, the performances are strong, independent of the way that they're anchored to the characters, right? Like what Joaquin Phoenix is doing is really, really good. And it's more than just being afraid the entire time, because there's actually levels that he's going through like his neuroses and just like the way that we are interpreting like everything that he's experiencing. And we start in this film traveling with this character through the birth canal, right? So I feel like that we are put in the same sense of like fracturing as what our protagonist is. And I really did enjoy that. I also really enjoyed Patti LuPone's performance. I really enjoyed Parker Posey's performance for a number of reasons. And
that's Mariah Carey. And y'all know
there's definitely some needle drops in here where like, you know, in a vacuum, if I were to take the pieces of this film, there's some really strong pieces here. And I think that's where it's where Aster is just being, this is his most free film to just go for it. And I can applaud that. Does it all work in the end? We'll talk about that more in a second.
Yeah. So for my positives, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. Number one, like Amanda said, the technical achievement is nothing to blink an eye at. It is a beautiful, gorgeous looking film. And I think as we talked about his filmography, Hereditary into Midsommar, that more kind of brighter, colorful palette, but at the same time, it's a nightmare. Same could be said about that. This is a very nightmarish film, but it is a gorgeous film to look at. And you pointed out one of the things too, man. I love that animation portion because it was just gorgeous as far as seeing it on screen. On a big screen, it was really great. Kobe hit on it performance-wise. I don't think there was a bad performance as far as as you said, some of the decisions I might not have been a fan of, but the performance at the end of the day is just something to be impressed with. And look, no disrespect to the queen of horror, Jamie Lee Curtis, with the supporting cast, you know, with Everything Everywhere All at Once. But I see Patti, if she can get a nomination for that, I can see Patti get it nominated. Because Patti LuPone, when she pops up in the film, and she's kind of sprinkled in throughout the first 2 acts, but when she gets her moment as Mona, as we'll talk about, she sold the film. For me, I thought her performance was pretty outstanding. And Amanda, you hit it on it as well as Kobe. The first half, I was locked in. I had my seatbelt on, super engaged, compelled. Like, oh, this is really building up to something of seeing this guy's anxiety. And as we'll talk about here in a second, it kind of goes off the rails and gets back on track and all. So it's just a frustrating experience to say the least. So before we kind of wrap up the spoiler-free portion of it, Amanda, going back to you again, if there were just light criticism before we really dive into, what were some things that when you walked out that you were like, that did not hit for me as far as criticisms go, without getting too much into the weeds?
I think the entire middle portion could have been cut. I'm going to be serious, because I think that's where I was like, why is it dragging? What is the point of this entire section in relation to what he's going through, going to, you know, his mother? Like, it didn't make any sense for me. So I think that it could have been cut down immensely. I think there were, I'd say maybe 4 acts, or it felt like 4 acts or 5 acts, depending, you know what I mean? So I think that it was disjointed because of that. And that it was like 4 different pieces of writing and like short stories that he wanted to piece together that didn't quite come together. The overarching story, I understand what he was trying to do, but maybe it just didn't click because of the nightmare element to it. Whereas I think it was a bit more grounded, because you can make it grounded within like a nightmarish type of atmosphere. You can do that. So I think that's where the disconnect was, in order to piece everything together at the end. That's my only criticism, is that it could have been cut down, and he could have like picked out more important parts of the story that he could tell to make it more grounded.
Yeah, I think Kobe said it earlier, as far, or maybe it was you, Amanda, as far as the freedom that he had, the creative freedom he had, is always great. You always love, you know, to hear that the director gets their final cut or their full vision out there. But sometimes you need someone to put the reins on, put some sort of restraints and some limitations, not entire limitations. But I think, I definitely agree with you on the length of the film. But Kobe, man, what say you on some of your main criticisms without getting into the spoilers of it all?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a spoiler that Beau is afraid, and it should not be a spoiler by now that Kobe was annoyed throughout. I was strapped in, ready for the first act, and I knew, I was like, "Yo, this is gonna be a 3-hour movie." So I know at some point I just need to like be able to get the connective points, so that way, like, I could, like, the journey was worth it. The juice was worth the squeeze. But man, it was an interesting experience, because I'm watching it early. I didn't even realize I was watching it early. This wasn't a press screening like that. It just was only available just like a few amount of theaters nationwide, right? And I'm with a lot of other like critics that are watching this as well. And we're all just like, what is going on? Like, when is this going to make sense? Hold on, wait a minute. Like, I'm an hour and a half in. What is going on? So I like, my best friend from the UK is here. I got my other best friend here with me, and like I've not enjoyed them in person at the same time ever. And this is the movie we're choosing to watch. It was like, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm really sad. This isn't what I want to do to take up your time. And the thing is, it's like, not entirely was the movie like, it's not a bad film. It's just a film that amounts to frustrating levels of something, but like, it's trying to lean on like it being like wild for wild's sake, and that does not work for me. And it's hard, because this is such a subjective medium. Like, how do you objectively quantify what's bad direction versus good direction? You can't. It's just a matter, does the direction work for you or not? And I think when it comes to direction, it's telling the story, not necessarily with words. And if I'm looking at just these vivid images, that's not enough. But then when I'm looking at the words, I'm just like, there's some decision-making and lack of refinement to like character development and payoff, where there's things that I needed in this screenplay that give a counterbalance to what I'm seeing. And I think the biggest thing is that I don't know what's real and what's not, because it's never established what is real at all. And that's such a like weird place to be. And it's not bad for a film to leave you with like wanting to have questions answered, but I feel like all the questions need to be answered, and that feels a little weird to me.
Yeah.
You guys said it perfectly, man. And just kind of to give you guys my quick thoughts on criticisms, I do think it was too long. I do think there was lack of character development. I do think the last half of the film kind of almost makes the first 2 hours kind of weightless when you get to the end result. But I think Kobe said something, a word as far as experience. And I think a Christopher Nolan or, a Martin Scorsese, where they're trying to invoke a feeling to you. And art, as you mentioned, Kobe, is very subjective. It's hard to invoke a feeling in art without substance, as far as, like, again, the script. Ari Aster writes and directs his films, and I think he directed this much better than he wrote this film. And I don't think the combination of the two just wasn't on the same wavelength collectively and consistently throughout the film. So it did make it, as I said earlier, a little disjointed, a little bit jarring and a frustrating experience, to say the least. So those are our main pros and our cons. And one thing before we pivot over to the actual spoiler portion, Amanda, briefly, if someone walked up to you, with you being a great critic that you are, say, hey, Amanda, I heard there's a new movie called Beau Is Afraid by Ari Aster. Should I go see this? What would you say to that person? Is this a film you could recommend to someone?
The first question that I would ask in return is, have you watched Hereditary and Midsommar?
Familiar with his work?
Yeah. Are you familiar with his work? Because then for me, it's much easier to be like, if you like his other stuff, you'll appreciate this. But if you have never watched the other two, and I'm telling you to sit down for 3 hours and you're not this type of fan, then I wouldn't suggest going to watch this. So I think it's strictly for fans of Ari Aster. I'm not saying that maybe someone who hasn't watched it, watched his stuff wouldn't appreciate it. That's not what I'm saying, but it's like, it's kind of like recommending, a Tarantino film. Like, his stuff. It's like, well, if you liked him before, you're gonna like him now. So I think that's the basis of it that I could answer.
You used a great term. You said, if you like Ari Aster stuff, you'll appreciate this. Right. And I think that's interesting. Like, I do believe that some storytellers, like, we create a bias for them that allows them a longer leash than others, and say, hey, listen, while this didn't work for me, I can appreciate it, or I can appreciate the attempt. I do believe that it's creating this schism in film criticism and analysis that, like, I definitely want to, like, attach more, because it has been interesting. And I cannot rightfully recommend this film to someone, because I don't believe that what we get at the end is worth the experience to get there. Now, if this ends up on Netflix and want to chop this up into, like, little chapters or whatever, and there's some, like, really, like, creative way of, like, kind of digesting this, like they did with, Martin Scorsese's long ass movie.
Even The Hateful Eight with Quentin Tarantino, they chopped it up. Yeah.
I cannot believe that people did that, but it's besides the point.
But that was a very interesting
Flowers
approach to that. Oh gosh, but I will say this, as a lover of film, I do love the conversations that we're having. And the thing is, we're going to land on many differences of opinions about it. We will always be respectful and always be, like, super, like, inviting of the conversation. And I will say this, because someone recorded me talking to someone else at the end of this movie when I got out of it. And I will say, when the film ended, I've never done this before. I stood up right when the credits were rolling. I gave it a beat, maybe like 10 seconds. I stood up and I looked at everybody. I don't want to hear a single fucking clap for this movie. I'm being facetious. Clap all you want. However, best believe that if we talk about this in a forum like this, you better come correct. Don't just say I like it because it's wild. No, I need to understand what wild means to you and what made sense. And you need to do it in a really appreciative way.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same, and I have my little out of the theater reaction. I said I can't, like, honestly recommend it to just any and everyone, but I love the conversation that this film is kind of bringing to the table, and that's what art does. It opens up the conversation. It's not just a blanket black and white film that's just, we get to point A to point B, and there's no conflict, there's no disagreements or whatever the case may be. So I love that it opens up the conversation, whether you loved it or hate it or fall somewhere in the middle. So I love what the films brings to that point. So for general audiences, probably not the best experience for you if you're not familiar with his work and you're not really into this type of storytelling. But then for people that, again, that are Ari Aster fans, that kind of like the Robert Eggers of the world, Jennifer Kents of the world, these kind of more, I know the word is kind of disgraceful as far as like the high level of horror, or, you know, that artistic side of horror, or elevated horror.
Elevated art house.
Yeah, so I mean, I can see people of that genre maybe going in there and seeing what they can get into. So again, overall, I would say give it a watch if you know what you're getting into, which we're about to get into it now. And before we pivot into the spoilers, this portion was a spoiler-free half of it. So let us know in the comments what you liked, what you didn't like. Will you see the film based on our opinion? So on and so forth. But more importantly, as you can see on screen, we have two great people, Amanda and Kobe. Their links are in the description of the video, so make sure to check them out. Subscribe, follow them. They have great content and great opinions. So do yourself a favor, show them some support. And we're going to leave the spoiler portion of this video in the description of this one. So with that being said, time to jump into the spoilers. And again,